Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alison Lagrange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global South. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison Lagrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Israel deploys tanks along the northern border with Lebanon. This as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu orders his troops to prepare for a possible ground operation against Hezbollah. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris meets Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House. The Democratic presidential nominee promises to support Ukraine's fight against Russia if she is elected president. Japan's former defense minister Shigeru Ishiba to become the country's next prime minister. This is current Prime Minister Fumio Kishida will step down on the 1st of October. And the Democratic Republic of Congo accuses Rwanda of supporting M23 rebels. Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi urges the international community to sanction Rwanda. And Russian President Vladimir Putin meets his counterpart from Equatorial Guinea in Moscow. The two leaders discuss increasing cooperation in oil and gas exports. Hello and welcome. Let's take a look at our top story. Our top focus is on Sudan. The Sudanese army has launched its biggest offensive in months to regain control of areas lost to the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or the RSF. Smoke engulfed the skies of Khartoum as the army launched artillery and airstrikes in the capital. At least 4 people have reportedly been killed and at least 14 have been wounded. Locals said they witnessed heavy bombardments and clashes when army troops tried to cross 3 key bridges over the Nile River that separate parts of Khartoum held by the army from those under RSF control. As per reports, army forces were able to cross the bridges. However, the RSF has denied the claims. The paramilitary RSF has occupied nearly all of the Sudanese capital since the civil war erupted in April last year. Sudan's army-backed government is currently based in Port Sudan on the Red Sea coast. This is the army's first major offensive since February, when it regained much of Omdurman, the capital's twin city across the Nile and part of Greater Khartoum. The RSF, meanwhile, control nearly all of the vast western region of Darfur. It has also rampaged through the agricultural heartland of central Sudan and has further pushed into southeast. An intense battle is ongoing for the city of Al-Fashir, where the RSF launched a large-scale offensive after months of siege last weekend. Now, in the latest, at least 18 have reportedly been killed in the RSF attack on a local market in the city. Al-Fashir is the capital of the North Darfur state and is the only one of 5 state capitals in Darfur not yet in the hands of the RSF. Now, the Sudanese army offensive in Khartoum came just ahead of an address by its commander, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, at the United Nations General Assembly in New York. In his address, the army chief demanded for the rebel RSF to be designated as a terrorist group. He accused the RSF of obstructing peace efforts. Al-Burhan also accused unnamed countries in the region of providing the RSF with financial support, weapons, and political cover.
Countless crimes have been committed: ethnic cleansing, forced displacement, and genocide. All of this has been committed by the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, which should be considered a terrorist group. This militia is continuing to perpetrate crimes, and it is most unfortunate that it is receiving the support of some countries in the region, countries which are providing funding and mercenaries for their own political and economic benefit, in flagrant violation of law and international will.
The Sudanese army has repeatedly accused the United Arab Emirates of backing the RSF, allegations that the Arab nation denies. The army also rejected to participate in the US-led peace talks in Geneva last month due to the UAE's presence and the format of the talks. As per the World Health Organization, at least 20,000 people have been killed in the Sudan civil war. However, some estimates put the death toll up to 150,000. It has also created the world's largest displacement crisis, with more than 10 million people uprooted from their homes. How will the latest escalation impact the possibility of a ceasefire? Now, for more on this, we have with us Musa Mdunge, an international affairs expert who is joining us from Dundee in the UK. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Musa, what are the primary objectives of the Sudanese army's latest offensive against the RSF in Khartoum?
Well, as you've so wonderfully put it, in that visual of the map, the army, the military in Sudan, unfortunately, does not hold much control over the regional capitals, including Khartoum as the national capital of Sudan. And this latest offensive is a bid for the military under al-Burhan to reclaim a certain level of legitimacy, strategic legitimacy, as it enters into these multiple sort of negotiating spaces. We know, for example, that the United States is holding on the sideline of the United Nations negotiation talks in order to reach a ceasefire. And it is my view that al-Burhan seeks in this offensive to really improve, the military's negotiation position and power and bargaining power as it enters these talks. It is clear that the RSF is in the dominating position in terms of the conflict currently, and in many ways, the military, which sees itself as the legitimate voice of the Sudanese government, is trying to re-establish a certain level of legitimacy. The problem with this, Alison, is indeed the same one we find when we think of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, where both sides seek to one-up the other militarily as a way of improving their diplomatic negotiated positions. And in this case, I believe we are seeing the very same thing unfold, because it's unsurprising that in that very same UN address, he then goes on to speak about a road towards a peaceful settlement of conflict and a move towards negotiations, while moving on this offensive. To many, it may seem like a contradiction, but to me, it really is in line with that grander diplomatic strategy.
Right. And how has the international community responded to the escalation of conflict between the Sudanese army and the RSF?
Well, this is where it really gets interesting, right, Alison, is that the international community is quite fragmented in terms of its view of this particular conflict and in terms of its support for both sides. We know, for example, that the UAE has been accused of supporting the RSF, both with logistical and material support, including supporting the exports of gold, which UAE is a key market for that. And the money produced from those exports has been said to be used in terms of buying military armaments, rearming the RSF, and therefore escalating the conflict. both the United States and the United Nations broadly have condemned the conflict, have called for a cessation of conflict and a move towards a negotiated settlement. But unfortunately, given that, different sides have vested interests in this particular conflict, this is coming to bear in the way the international community has really tried to coordinate a negotiated settlement. You have, for example, the United States and the UN, and as well as the AU on one side pursuing some sort of a negotiated settlement. But at the same time, you have Egypt, for example, that is a major player in that particular conflict, of course. Understandable, because you've had about 500,000 Sudanese refugees crossing over the border between Sudan as well as Egypt. And from a grander regional perspective, players like Ethiopia, for example, have also entered the fray, because this conflict is really just but a silo in a bigger sort of vacuum of regional conflict that is facing that particular area of Africa.
Absolutely, Musa. So you have touched on the impact of the conflict on the civilian population in the surrounding areas and, of course, in Khartoum. What are the potential long-term implications of this offensive for the stability and the future of Sudan and the region?
Well, I mean, to start off in Sudan, of course, we know that there's been this growing humanitarian crisis, thousands of people who have been killed, more than 14 million misplaced around that particular region. And the challenge for the region is that a country like Sudan, where there's no stable government, becomes a hotbed for different militias to rise, for terrorist networks to develop. And we know that that region has really seen a lot of conflict and huge machinations of different types of militias rising up. But also from an economic perspective, it poses long-term challenges to the stability of the region. When one considers, for example, this grand Renaissance dam that is being developed by Ethiopia, which both Sudan and Egypt see as a threat to their own sort of food security and access to the Nile. And so this war poses a logistical and very practical threat, both to Sudan's security, food security, humanitarian security, but as well as Egypt. And let's not forget the strategic importance that Egypt has as a transcontinental country, and one which controls, for example, the one which controls major trading routes between Europe as well as the rest of Asia. And so conflict in Sudan is quite problematic for global trade as well. And so unless the global community sort of comes together and really sees this conflict for what it is, as a major conflict that has the potential to really interrupt global trade flows, perhaps we'll then start to see this particular conflict being given a greater focus in the same way, for example, the Israel-Hamas conflict has been given focus.
Absolutely. Musa, it's always great to have you on the show. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Moving on to West Africa, where Benin appears to have dodged a coup bullet. 3 men were arrested in Benin for allegedly plotting a coup to overthrow President Patrice Talon. Now, among the arrested men were former Sports Minister Oswald Hamaki and businessman Olivier Boko, a close friend of President Talon, who is also reported to be the alleged mastermind of the entire coup plot. Now, according to state prosecutor Elon Mario, the former business and sports minister Oswald Hamaki was caught red-handed while handing over 6 bags of money to the head of the country's Republican Guard, which is the branch of the country's armed forces responsible for the security of leaders, including the president. Now, Hamaki was caught bribing a senior colonel with over $2.5 million to not resist the coup while being in charge of the president's security on the 27th of September, the supposed date of the coup operation.
It appears the Republican Guard commander in charge of the president's security was engaged by the minister. Oswald Homke and Olivier Boko, in order to carry out a coup by force on September 27, 2024.
The coup plot was allegedly orchestrated at the behest of Olivier Boko, a wealthy businessman and a close ally of President Patrice Talon. Now, Boko had recently suggested that he would make a run for the presidency in 2026, when President Talon's second term in office is set to end. Now, President Talon had recently said that he would not seek a third term in office in the 2026 elections. Meanwhile, Olivier Boko's lawyers have described his detention as abduction and have demanded his immediate release. Authorities are now investigating if there are more people involved in the alleged coup plot. President Talon, who has led Benin since 2016, is accused of eroding democratic standards in the country during his tenure. Despite Benin being a multi-party democracy, most opposition parties were excluded from the 2021 elections in which President Talon returned to power. Now, the voter turnout declined from 65% in 2016 to just 27% in 2021. Presidential elections reflecting the decline in public trust in the country's electoral process. Since 2020, there have been 7 military takeovers and several other coup attempts in the West and Central Africa. In Benin's immediate neighborhood, Burkina Faso and Niger are ruled by military juntas. As coup attempts become a regular affair, only a few democratically elected governments remain in the region. The question that remains is, can Benin hold on to the semblance of democracy? On to North Africa now, where tensions are escalating between neighbours Algeria and Morocco. In the latest, Algeria has accused Morocco of being involved with an Israeli spy operation. The Algerian government accused Rabat of sending Israeli intelligence agents, reportedly using Moroccan passports. In response, Algiers has again slapped visa requirements for all Moroccan passport holders. The two Arab nations have a long history of dispute. They had lifted visa entry requirements about 20 years ago, but Algiers has now reinstated these requirements, accusing Rabat of exploiting them to engage in activities that threaten its stability and national security. Apart from conducting Zionist espionage, Algeria's foreign ministry has accused Moroccan passport holders of a slew of other crimes. These include drug and human trafficking, smuggling, and illegal migration. Earlier this month, authorities in the Algerian city of Tlemcen has said that they had arrested 7 people, including 4 Moroccans, accused of belonging to a spy ring. Now, neighbours Algeria and Morocco do not share cordial ties. The borders between the two nations have been closed for the last 3 decades. Things worsened in 2021 when Algiers broke diplomatic ties with Rabat, months after the kingdom normalized relations with Israel. Algeria then accused Morocco of hostile acts. Morocco's recognition of Israel came at the end of 2020 when it signed the Abraham Accords, a series of historic agreements negotiated by then U.S. President Donald Trump. The agreements saw Arab countries like the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco normalize relations with Israel in return for various concessions. Morocco had received crucial U.S. backing in its dispute over Western Sahara with Algeria. The U.S. recognized Morocco's claim over the disputed region. Morocco considers Western Sahara, also known as the Shawari Republic, as an integral part of its territory. It has maintained de facto control over most of the region for decades. However, most countries and the United Nations have refused to endorse Morocco's claim. Meanwhile, neighbouring Algeria has lent its support to the pro-independence group in Western Sahara. Algeria has shown an unconditional support for the pro-independence movement since 1975 and has delivered them arms, financial aid and food. After Algiers announced cutting off of ties with Rabat, it also halted the flow of a gas pipeline to Spain via Morocco and banned all Moroccan aircraft from entering or crossing its airspace. and boycotted Moroccan ports. Now, Morocco has said several times that Algeria was unjustified in cutting diplomatic and economic ties and has described the accusations over Israel as absurd. Rabat has not yet responded to the latest accusations. Now, how will the rivalry over Israel further complicate the situation in North Africa and West Asia? We'll keep tracking the details. And finally, to our special segment, Resurgent Africa. Amid the coups and the crises, there are many positive stories from Africa that often get overlooked, but not on this show. Now, a quiet revolution is happening on two wheels in South Africa, where cycling is now more than just a mode of transport. It is becoming a path to give communities more opportunities. With more young girls now learning to ride bicycles, freedom is slowly catching wind. The change was kick-started by one man who is now fondly known as Cape Town's bicycle mayor. Our next report gets you more on how girls are becoming more empowered, one cycle at a time.
There is a unique freedom in riding a bicycle. The wind in your face, the steady rhythm of your pedals, the world unfolding beneath your wheels. For many in Cape Town's Khayelitsha township, the simple joy seems distant. But
hi, my name is Sindile Mavundla and I'm the bicycle mayor of Cape Town.
Is changing that, especially for young girls. Mavundla grew up in Khayelitsha, a sprawling township of makeshift homes far removed from the city's affluent suburbs. He has seen how limited opportunities can be, especially for girls.
Majority of girls in the township, they are not given much sport options, and we have always seen that bicycle has the potential of changing lives.
And that's when he launched the Khayelitsha Cycling Academy in 2022. The vision was to get young people, particularly girls, into cycling.
Girls cycling here in Khayelitsha is one of the best things. We're encouraging more girls to do cycling, encouraging more girls to be more involved in cycling. And I believe that we're doing history for our township, Khayelitsha. We're doing history for Cape Town, and we're doing history for South Africa.
So one afternoon, he led a group of girls through the township streets, many riding for the first time. Nervous laughter filled the air. And as one girl mounted her bike, she wobbled and fell. Mavundla was there. "You're almost there," he said gently, helping her up. "Now push hard."
You're almost there. So now push hard. Cool.
And moments later, with cheers from her friends, she was cycling proudly, hands raised in triumph.
We have seen so much difference in the community, the impact that we have made to young girls in the township, and we have an influx of other girls that want to come and ride.
For Mavundla, these small victories are what it's all about. In a place where students often walk up to 15 kilometers to school, a bike offers not just speed, but a sense of independence and pride. His academy now has 30 members, and more girls are signing up every day.
From there, the project has grown for over 5 years. I think we used to track that on the main road in Woodstock. There's about 500 cyclists that you see on a daily basis, and that number now has grown to over 1,000 cyclists that you see. And it's something that is really fascinating for us.
But Cape Town's cycling culture has a long way to go. As of now, only 1% of daily commutes are done by bike, and cycling infrastructure is sparse. Mavundla and other bike mayors like him are pushing for safer bike lanes to protect the growing number of cyclists.
Cape Town's cycling infrastructure is not safe. As you can see, a very expensive car, a metal box, parking illegally but also dangerously. So as a solution, young urbanists and our partners, SDI Trust, are working with the City of Cape Town to upgrade the cycling lane through a public-private partnership.
But seems like infrastructure is not the only problem. Mavundla is working to challenge perceptions too. In South Africa, cycling is often seen as either a last resort for the poor or a sport for the rich, and he's working to break that mold.
Cycling is a means of a very affordable transportation in not just Cape Town but across the country. To give an example, one tank of petrol is one second-hand bicycle, so it's a means of transportation.
And cycling is not just about breaking barriers in South Africa. Almost 9,000 kilometers away is another such example. A cycling revolution has also empowered the school-going girls in India. Girls in rural India are ditching walking for a more comfortable ride. Over a decade, cycling levels among girls in rural areas has increased exponentially. With some schools being almost 10 to 15 kilometers away from villages, more girls in rural India are choosing to cycle to school instead of walking. And this approach is becoming a growing phenomenon. Apart from South Africa and India, the trend of more girls cycling has even picked up in Kenya, Malawi and Zimbabwe. Cycling is truly changing the lives of women and shaping the future of countries. Cape Town's bicycle mayor is a winning example of that. Because with each ride, Mavundla is helping to build a future. He knows the journey is far from over, but each day, with every young rider he teaches, Cape Town moves a little closer to a future where cycling isn't just for the privileged, it's for everyone.
And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again at the same time on Monday. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend and goodbye.
Hello and welcome to Fast and Factual. My name is Utsav Parekh and here are the top stories of the day. An Israeli airstrike has killed the head of Hezbollah's drone unit, Mohammad Hussein Srour. The Israeli Defense Forces launched the strike towards Lebanon's capital,